As a preface, this isn't actually part of the speech yet, but I chose to do a eulogy for a historical figure for my special occasion, and it requires a little bit of background information just to understand what exactly it's about. It's about a labor rights activist in the early 1900s by the name of Joe Hill, who was executed by firing squad in 1915. So that's a little bit of background, so we all have an understanding of who I'm talking about.
Great, thank you. You are recording, so when you're ready.
All right. Hello, everyone. We're gathered here today to remember a man, but more than a man. He was an icon and a martyr. Joseph Hillstrom, or Joe Hill as he's known in the labor movement, was removed from this world in an act of spite and intimidation. As a message to the workers around the country that the state will stop at nothing to protect the profits of the ownership class. On November 19th, 1915, Joe was shot dead for the alleged murder of a store owner and former police officer by the name of John Morrison. Despite evidence not corroborating the story of the prosecution, despite the possibility of witness tampering, and despite his own alibi having been supported by others involved in his situation and by the observation involved in the investigation, Joe Hill was a convenient target. But with the labor movement growing stronger, much to the dismay of the state, and Joe knew this. He knew he would be used as an example to paint labor in a negative light. But in the end, Joe knew that his death would be more than just another stain on American liberty, and welcomed his fate. As a laborer myself, I stand in solidarity against the state that deemed it necessary to sacrifice a man in order to suppress the voice of the workers. Why Joe Hill? Why this Swedish-American immigrant laborer of all people? Well, Joe was not your regular working stiff. He was an active member of the one big union, the International Workers of the World. He was inspiration to others in the union as well. He wrote poems, wrote songs, he was a cartoonist, made speeches, and it was all in support of the union and its goals. Joe was executed to intimidate the unions, but not just the unions, the labor strikers, the immigrant workers, all who might stand in solidarity against the oppressive ownership class who would keep them at the bottom. He knew why he was convicted. He knew that he would be used as a scapegoat or as an example. In a letter to the Salt Lake Telegram, as found in Philip Sheldon Foner's book, The Case of Joe Hill, Joe writes, owing to the prominence of Mr. Morrison, there had to be a goat. And the undersigned being, as they thought, a friendless tramp, a Swede, and worst of all, an IWW member, had no right to live anyway, and was duly selected to be the goat. So what was his response to his trial? To them finding him guilty off of shaky evidence and clear interest of the state? Well, in a telegram to Bill Haywood, one of the founders of the IWW, he wrote, "Don't waste my time mourning. Organize." Joe used his death to galvanize the labor movement, showing his selflessness and loyalty to the cause, We must all remember Joe Hill as the man who gave himself for the good of the labor movement, and not what the copper bosses who shot him down purported him to be. In the end, his memory remains with us as we continue the fight for worker liberation. And in that sense, he will never truly die. As Alfred Hayes' poem, written in his memory, goes, from San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where working men defend their rights, that's where you'll find Joe Hill. Thank you for your time.